Yes, people, welcome back to Above the Knee with me, Liam Loftus, and of course, we're joined by Jay Extended. Jay, how are we, man?
I've been better, but I'm looking forward to this.
Jay, don't bring the mood down. We're also joined by Leicester City correspondent Hannah Wellon. Hannah, how are you?
I'm good. I mean, I joined this meeting to Jay just absolutely losing it. So I'm doing great. He could be doing better, but I'm doing great. I'm enjoying this.
See, Jay, this is the energy we need. Like, Hannah's just woken up an hour ago and she's buzzing. You've had all day to right your wrong, and you're still sulking, bro.
I'm just a spoiled fan, just a spoiled fan. I can't help it.
Right, let's talk last weekend because big results affecting, like, let's say both the clubs that were here. Obviously, Birmingham beating Arsenal. Hannah, what are your feelings from the Leicester side of things?
I'm just glad that we had Christmas, like a whole 3 weeks to enjoy being out of that relegation spot. It's better than 2 days, but I just remember seeing it and thinking okay, no, Birmingham are only 1-0 up. Arsenal's gonna come back. They're gonna get the points. It's fine. And you'd never catch me rooting for Arsenal ever besides that day. And that was the only time it's ever happened. And you guys just had to blow it. you let me down. The one time I'm rooting for you, you let me down. But I'm happy for Libby Smith, former Fox, but not happy that it was for Birmingham. But good for them. That's a hard win to get, so good for them. But I'm not happy. I'm happy for them, but not for us. I'm trying to be positive and kind towards them about it, but in my head I'm like, no, I want you to go down.
How would I describe it? You're not mad at it, but you're not happy with it, I'd say. Mm-hmm. You're not mad that Birmingham won. Yeah. It's okay, you have all right to do that, but you're also like, Arsenal, are you joking?
Yeah, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed.
The worst when a parent says that to you. Oh,
exactly.
Hey, how are you feeling? Arsenal side of things. Let's keep it brief.
Okay.
No comment.
Okay.
Got no comment.
Just, yeah. I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. And the thing is, we came back from Christmas break, so it's you should be refreshed and ready to go, and that wasn't there. So on to the next game. At the end of the day, still top regardless of what Chelsea do in their next game. So, but just pain.
I can hear it in your voice. Heartbreak. But let's go to Leicester result. A 1-0 loss to Reading. This is going to be so cliche, but I know it's a bad result in terms of you got no points, but I don't think it was a bad result. I don't think you guys were outplayed at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going into this game, it was tough because Reading's been on some streak that I don't think anyone really expected. They've been super up and down, on and off, and you're seeing it with us too. Yeah, we only got points off of Birmingham, but we showed up against Chelsea. We showed up against Brighton. We absolutely should have gotten a point off of Brighton, but obviously we didn't, so move on. But Reading was the game that we were going into looking at this is another opportunity to get 3 points, if not one. And coming off of that Birmingham result, they're on that high. They're ready to go into this game. They just got a win, and it was at the King Power, their first ever WSL win too. So obviously going into that game, all of us were like, okay, we have a chance. And that's how we feel going into every single game. But as soon as I saw that Sigsworth and Flint were unavailable and we had no strikers, I was like, what's gonna happen here? Obviously we had Abby Grant, but she was just getting battered around. I was so surprised she didn't go off. I feel like she should have, but I think she's okay, and hopefully she is. But I remember just watching that game and being we should be scoring. There's so many opportunities and we're just not hitting the back of the net. It's just either going over the crossbar or it's just going straight to the goalkeeper, So I felt like it was fairly 50-50. Reading had their opportunities, they took them. Their first goal, well, their only goal, it was a weird one. I don't know how that went in or why it went in, but I'll allow it. But overall, yeah, it was an interesting game. You could tell we were a strong side that was still suffering from injuries. So I'm not here to blame. I'm not pulling the injury card. I know, like, as a Leicester fan, men and women's side, like, the injury card is just being played nonstop. But that just, you could tell that we were impacted by players not being available. So
people always argue
again,
like
we didn't score.
like it's a part of the game. Injuries are part of the game. You're always going to get some injuries, granted. But I find it really hard as a fan to like be disappointed with a result, but you're like, oh, I can actually take positives from this game. And it's like, you think, like you were saying, if you had certain players back, it might have been a different result. And that's like, so frustrating. And it's like, you just like, we could have, if that game was a week later or the week before, like you would have had players available, you might have had players available, and you just came at the wrong time. But for me, I honestly think that Leicester will stay up. I really do. Like you said, you've gone into some games, and speaking to Shannon last week, like the vibe seems sick. Like it's still like very much a team where when they were struggling beforehand, obviously before Christmas, when they weren't out of the relegation zone, like weren't bottom, everyone's still happy. Everyone's still like, it's still good vibes. And I think like the atmosphere in the changing rooms makes a massive difference. I think that impacts the fans as well. It's like, because you see it all the time, like some teams, you're on a losing streak, you think, oh, head down, like we're done here now. And it's like, when you can feel it in the stadium, you can feel it like across social media, and it's like, oh, we're dead in the water here. But it doesn't feel like that with Leicester. Like you said, every game you go into, it's like, oh, we're positive here. Like we could get a result. We know we play decent football. Like, fair enough, we're not the top of the table, but like we can get a result here. And I think just that, like the belief in the team and the atmosphere, for me, I think that's enough. I really do think that's enough. Birmingham pulling off, we were saying before, Jay, like I can't remember a bigger upset. Like not even just women's football, like men's football. Off the top of my head, I can't think like, an unbeaten team getting beaten by a team winless. Like, because you have it in like the FA Cup and the cup competitions, but you expect that. It's a one-off game. You think, like, let's just go and do what we can.
It's how they've done it. They've outplayed Arsenal. They've stopped them from scoring. A team, and like Arsenal they weren't really like attacking options. Everyone was there. Everyone that you'd expect to hurt you was there. And nothing happened. And you have to think the best chances in the game went to Birmingham. How many teams can really leave playing Arsenal and say they had the best chances? That kind of win, playing out your skin like that, like hats off to Birmingham. They could have been deflated by what happened at Leicester and how well Leicester played, and they could have had their heads down, but they came out fighting, and I think Arsenal can learn from that.
See, this is exactly what I mean in my head. Like, Arsenal-wise, you're a ridiculously strong team, bro. Like, and the way it's so downbeat and you're so disappointed, that's reserved for Birmingham and Leicester. Like, they should be the ones feeling like this, but they're not. They're upbeat. Do you know what I mean? I find it like it's mental. It's mental to me, but at the same time, it's so charming, and I just love it. And I think this is why Leicester has been like such an easy team to fall in love with this season. Because like coming from last year, you sort of heard about it, and then it's like, okay, like Leicester as a club playing at the King Power. You're like, oh, like it's like that meme, I can't think what it is, the wrestling guy. No, he's like sat in his seat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like that. And it's sort of like building. It's like, okay, that's how I feel like it's been this season. And then the final one is just them staying up. That's what we need to complete the meme. But that's how I feel like being a neutral with Leicester's been like for me. We've made a couple new signings. Are we positive about the signings? Hannah, I can see you smiling already.
We've only really been able to see Fred Gregory, but oh my God, I was impressed. So at first I was like, Leicester's has the average youngest squad in the WSL. Why are we bringing in more youth players? Like, especially when Lydia Bedford said like, oh, I want to bring in an experienced goalkeeper. And I kind of joked because she's wanting a goalkeeper in like that 35 age range, but then she's bringing in like 18-year-olds from academies and nothing in between. Like, that's just it. So I was thinking, like, why are we bringing in like youth players when we're wanting to kind of boost that age? Because I always hear commentators in games saying like, oh, well, Leicester's squad is incredibly young. Like, I think our average age is 22. And like, you can tell commentators kind of use that as a thing to like kind of pick us apart. Like, oh, they lack experience. And which you can argue, like, we definitely have experience within different players. Sure, maybe less than Arsenal would, or even like Brighton. But at first I was kind of skeptical, but then I saw Gregory come on. I was like, okay, she knows how to play. She's not here to play about. Like, she's ready. And she came on and she made an impact like right away. I posted a clip of her yesterday because I was like, this is impressive. And, like, me being Canadian, obviously I was super happy to see Deanne Rose playing. I can't hate her. She was breaking down our wings several times, exposing our defense, but I was like, she's Canadian, I'll allow it. And then Gregory just played with her. Like, she made a fool of Rose. And I was like, okay, she's not here to mess around, So I was super impressed with her. And obviously their stats speak for themselves too. Like, Missy Goodwin has incredibly good stats with Villa's Academy, and Gregory does as well. And I think it's Gregory that signed on a pro contract with us. So right now, I'd love to keep her. I know it's still super early on and I'm basing it solely off of our performance against Reading, but right now I'm just super duper impressed.
I mean, you make the right impact, and that's what you need. I always think it's hard coming in mid-season as well, especially like with a team like this. But for me, I don't know, I hate the cliche, like, oh, it's a young team, they're inexperienced. Like, okay, but what difference does that make? Like, surely for me, that's like, that brings a fearlessness, because you're not worried about, oh, like, we've done this before, I've been in this position before. It's very new. Everyone's gone, now we've just come up, a lot of us have just come up from the championship, and we won that. So we're used to winning. Like, our experience is winning. And especially like bringing players from academies, like when you're bringing them from like decent academies, that's all they know. And it's like, oh, they're not going to come in. I understand I want to bring in an old head to maybe settle everyone in the dressing room. But at the same time, it's like the camaraderie of having a team also similar in age. Like, you can't buy that. That's so good. Like, and it makes it so exciting. And it's like, yeah, just I think it's a bit, personally, I think it's a cop out when commentators say about, oh, it's an inexperienced side. You're like, no, like, just let it go, man. Like, they're just young. Like, it happens. There's always going to be it takes a team to have a full 18 of young players, and then they all stay together, and that you build a wicked team, and you're like, oh, like, these are actually quite good. And you're like, no, like, just believe in them. Well, I can't remember who. It's one of them. I can't remember the quote. I can't remember. Probably like, might have been Fergie. Like, just play the kids, innit? Play the kids. But yeah, I do think you've had some injuries. I think losing level for the season is hard. She was playing unbelievable in goal before.
She's out the season.
She's not out for the season.
No, I think I feel like it was like 3 months, something like that. She's just had.
I thought it was a season.
No, Hannah Kane is out for the remainder of the season, but I think Lavelle's supposed to come back at some point.
Okay.
I think that'll be a major boost then. So yeah, excuse me.
No, it's okay.
Having Lavelle back, that would be a major boost, because she was in ridiculous form before the injury. But again, it's like these little things. It's that injury card, boy. It's like so. It's just you just can't get a break, and that's what it feels like. Like, that happens. You got injuries, and then boom, get a win. But when we spoke to Shannon last week, she was majorly positive. And I think after watching her again, I think she is one of the most exciting talents in the WSL. But I know before I was like, I watched her and thought, oh yeah, it's like, and she was saying about her goal, she was like, I didn't expect to be like an established player. And then like watching the highlights, and I was like, oh no, like you very much deserve to be here. I mean, we gave her flowers anyways and said, like, you've worked to be here. But yeah, I think she was such an exciting player, and like the clips keep rolling of her, like, no, and it's like, I don't know what the skill's called, but like switched it left foot, right foot, and it was like 2 players closing her down. She's gone. I was like, yeah, Shannon is a player.
I think that's what happens. It's very frustrating, because sometimes it feels if you're not in the top 3 clubs as a young player, it's going to be hard to get your props. You're going to hear from Arsenals, the Chelseas, the Cities. You're going to hear this young player is amazing and stuff like that. But you will have teams like Brighton, Leicester, Reading that have really great players like Gemma Lawley, players like Asmita Ale, Esther Morgan, all those kind of players. But because they're not the top 3, you won't hear like the major publications like talk about them, and it's like you have to watch them. And I think that needs to change a lot more, because especially with England set up and stuff like that, and just internationals, you want different kind of young players to get a chance, not just players that are at big teams that can kind of learn. You want the players that are playing week in, week out as well to get their chances.
It's very easy to look like at the end of the week or the end of the weekend, look at the results and be like, oh, this team lost. They've lost however many games. They can't really have any good players, but it is. I always think like, I don't love stats in football. Like, I don't know if it's because football growing up, there wasn't really stats. Like, it weren't really like that. You had top goal scorer and that was it, really. I'm not that old, but that's just what I remember still. Like, I just remember seeing it on Sky Sports News. And now you've got like so many different stats, but like, that I don't like. Like, you watch a player and you can see a player, whether you're watching them live or watching TV, and you can go, oh no, like you're actually like miles above. I remember watching someone in like an FA Cup game like years ago, and it was like a lower league team, and I was like, they're like, they can play, and everyone's like, oh yeah, but they're losing 5-0. I'm like, yeah, I know they're losing, but I can still see like the potential in that player. Like their technical ability doesn't go away because they're losing.
Exactly. I feel like so much of it is like you look at players and you just look at their stats. You don't look at the performances. You don't look at the games. And everyone just whips out stats, like especially in arguments, are like, oh, well, like look at this. Like their stats don't really speak for how they're performing. And I wrote a piece about Kirsty Lavelle, and you mentioned her, so of course I'm bringing this up. And the whole point of it was just to be like, you know, everyone with the goalkeepers, they specifically look at the stats. Oh, they've conceded this many goals. Sure, but are you looking at the amount of like shots that are coming at them per game, like shots on target, all of that stuff? Like you could argue that Lavelle, yes, conceded a number of goals prior to being out due to injury, but look at like the amount of shots that were coming at her in every single game. It could have been far worse. Like she could have been conceding like 10 goals a game, but she wasn't. So I think stats are just something that, unless you're looking for like fact, like pure fact, use the stats. If you're not, just watch the player, watch how they're performing, like watch the technique. You know, you talk about Shannon, like she's an outstanding player, and then you look at the ratings after a game. Well, that's stats again. They're not showing like, oh, well, you know, she made this much progression forward. She did like all this, you know, like it's sad that people just rely on stats, really. You know, like there's always that one stats man that's like, well, look at the stats, look at the stats. You're like, I don't need to. I watched the game.
It's modern football in a nutshell. This is unrelated, but just going on stats. Like during the Euros, I was in like, I got a ticket for like where the commentators sit, and they have like a computer screen next to you, and it has like everything, like live passes, percentage, like all that mental stuff. And you're looking at it, and I'm going like, why do I need this much stuff? Like, like it's a game of football, and I'm seeing, and I'm like watching a live pass, and it's like, okay, Italy have made 500 passes. I'm like, okay, like, but they're 1-0 down. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like these stats just don't matter. And also, you look at a player who might just make, I mean, this is all very standard, like sideways, backwards passes, and then you're like, okay, they're a really solid game stats wise. You're like, oh, 100% completion, pass completion. But then you've got one player who might be trying to make things happen, passing it forward all the time. It's like, okay, yeah, it's getting intercepted. Your pass completion rate isn't as high, but you were trying to make things happen. And the game finishes, 9 minutes, whistle goes, and I can whip up the stats and go, oh, mate, like, she struggled here. She's on 62% pass accuracy. And you go, Liam, did you watch the game? I'm like, no, I watch a thing. Like, I think a lot of modern football has got to, and I'm guilty for it all the time. I'll watch just the highlights. Like, there's so many games going on, and like especially like across different sports, like basketball on the worst. I'll watch the highlights and just look at the box score, because I just can't stay awake, or I haven't got time. And it does happen, but I feel like you can't base your opinion purely on, oh yeah, feel this person has stats unbelievable. Because more times than not, like I've been like, oh yeah, their stats are quite good. This is why I don't do like fantasy football or anything, because bro, like I pick players that I like, and they're not very good, and I'm like, well, they are, like they're all right. But yeah, going back and looking at like a stats box is just, it's just so modern football. It's like the XG thing. I don't know if anyone really understands it, like, but yeah, mental for me. And I just don't like it. Like, I think that's what the difference is. Like when you go to watch football live and you can focus on a player, like Sam, it's just a bit like, okay, you're taking in the whole game, but okay, number 22 is playing it right. Let me just keep an eye on them. And then you go back and look through who they are. I think that was, I've gone like down an absolute rabbit hole, but we're going to keep going. I think this was one of my things, like when I first got into women's football, because, okay, I'm a City fan, I know the City players, and it's like, right, now we're playing against Liverpool a few years ago, and I'm going, oh, like number 7's all right. And I don't know who they are. So then it's like, it's a backwards journey from, they've performed in this game, so they've passed the eye test. Now let me look at them. Now let me look at their stats instead of the other way round.
Especially the big teams. If you have to watch like a Chelsea and Arsenal, a City live to really see who the influencers are of the game. Because I think even yesterday, someone like the Birmingham game, Jade Pennock, she had a stunning game, but like obviously she didn't score or assist. But someone that was constantly causing Arsenal problems, and I think sometimes you can't get that from highlights. And then obviously Miedema could score next game, and then people focus on those players, but like they forget the players that were like instrumental in beating the great sides just before. And I think, yeah, more needs to be done. Like more people need to like get their flowers when they actually play really well, instead of just having a big game and then it just gets forgotten about.
Alan Shearer said that. I watched an interview of Alan Shearer not too long ago, and they were like, I can't remember who it was with, but it was like, oh, did you ever have a bad game? And he was like, never had a bad game. And it's like, that's a lie. And he's like, as a striker, you having a stinker, you score a goal, no one cares. Like, you can sit around and do nothing all game, but quickly bag a goal, and everyone's like, oh, like you played all right. You must have played all right because you scored. And you're like, no, didn't touch the ball, just got involved at the end.
Yeah, it's like pro clubs.
Yeah, massively. Yeah, get a goal on pro clubs and you boost it up to at least a 7.8.
Constantly at 9. Yeah, I wanted to ask, who's been your favorite person that you've interviewed so far?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It's genuinely tough. That's not me just being like, oh, like I love them all, because they're all so nice. They're all great. Favorite person, I don't think I have a favorite necessarily, because they're all so different. Like every single player I've spoken to has been incredibly different. I started with Ash Plumter, and she's my first ever player interview. And I remember I was just like pooping bricks because I had no experience in this whatsoever. I had never spoken to players before, like anything like that. Yeah, I interviewed Jonathan Morgan prior, and I feel so bad for him because he's my first ever interview. And I was like, I feel so bad for this guy. Like, you're like sweating, like trying to like figure out what I'm going to ask. But I started off with Ash, and Ash will sit there and speak to us for like 2 hours. Like there's only like a 45-minute clip. Our first interview with her was about 45 minutes. Our last one with her was, I think, 1:15. And she'll just sit there and she'll talk to you beforehand, and then you'll finish it up. And then she's like, okay, what do you guys want to talk about now? Like, what are you guys up to for the rest of the day? Like, she's just a chatter. And I'm the exact same. So of course, like it goes on forever, and it reaches a point of being like, okay, like I'll let you go, but so she's different in that sense, where she just loves to talk, and she has such great stories. So I love hearing what every single one of them has to say. And she's so nice. She's genuinely like incredibly nice. Like I could go on for hours about how nice she is. Like, I'm not even answering your question right now about who my favorite is, but I'm just giving a breakdown of every single one I've spoken to.
I think you're right with Ash though. She makes you feel like she's really engaged in what you're saying as well. Like you said, it's like
a person.
You're like, I'm interviewing you, and she's like, oh, how are you? And you're like, oh, and you're like wheeling off. Like, shit, no, I'm interviewing you. Stop, please. Like, let's get back to like what you've been doing. No one cares about me. Like,
yeah, she's amazing. I mean, the story I always tell about Ash is that when Canada was in the gold medal game, it was at like, I think it started at 6 a.m. my time, and I had to work during it. And I'm a teacher, so I can't necessarily just have it on as I'm teaching a lesson. So I had my phone like next to me just in case. And then all of a sudden I get a message from Ash. I'm like, why is Ash messaging me? And then she's like, oh my God. I was like, wait, what's happening for her to message me this? And I look, and then she's like, I'm so nervous. I'm like, what is she nervous about? Is this supposed to be coming to me? And then I see that the game's gone on to penalties. And you know, like we were like texting each other throughout the game and stuff. And then when we won, she was like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you, Hannah. Like, she was like, I wanted to talk to you. Like, I'm happy for you. You're Canadian. Like, and to me, that was like, wow, like a player went out of their way to be like, oh yeah, I know this one Canadian. Let me message her and see how she's doing during this game. Like, she was updating me throughout the penalty shootout. Like, I would have never expected, oh yeah, like a WSL player is just telling me about Team Canada, you know? And I understand like she played with Desiree Scott and stuff, so she's happy in that sense. But she was like, oh, I'm so happy for you. Like, you must be so proud. And she was like, just go cry, just let it all out. Like, that's the type of person Ash is. So she made it incredibly easy to be like my first interview for a player. And then I spoke to her a few weeks ago too, and she's just phenomenal. And then again, I'm not answering your question, but I'm still gonna break down about each player. The chillest I spoke to was definitely Charlie Devlin, like incredibly laid back person. I remember because like I love her play style. I was so nervous because I was like, she's an insane player. Like I genuinely, like, I know I post about her a lot, but it's because she's so entertaining. And I remember she like walked into the room and she just kind of sat, and you could tell she put her feet up on something, and then she's just like sipping her coffee, and she was like, hey, and I was like, hey, are you start this, you know? And like she was just so laid back, and you know, she was asking me questions that I was asking her, and she's like, well, I want to know your answer too. And I'm like, oh, well, I didn't expect this. So she was incredibly laid back and easy to talk to in that sense. So I love talking to her. And then Hannah Kane, I had like technology issues happening. So I remember feeling so bad because the interview had started, but I was so far behind. So then I saw her like kind of looking around, like she was confused, like what's happening. And then I was like, oh my God, has it started? And they're like, yeah. But she was such a sweetheart about it. Like she was genuinely so nice. And another player that just has so much to talk about. And PBG is super fun. You know, I spoke to her for an article, so there's no video with that. And she's just another super laid back player, you know, just asking me stuff about Canada too. Like, oh, I really want to visit there. Like, what do you suggest? Stuff like that. And yeah, and then I spoke to Sam Tierney last week, and every time you go into an interview with a player, you're like, I have no idea how this is going to go. I like, you see them on the surface, like a little bit, you know, you see them on the pitch, you see them do like their pressers or whatever, their post-match, pre-match, anything. And you don't get to know them as people necessarily, especially with Leicester. I find Leicester doesn't create content with the women's team, and they don't with the men's team either, really. So you don't necessarily get to know them. So every single time I'm going into an interview, I'm like, I actually don't know what these people are like, you know? And I speak to them every now and then through DMs, but that's completely different from actually speaking to them. And I remember she came in and she was just super chill as well, like super laid back. She was telling us about how she like just bought a house and just got her master's, and she's 23. I'll be 23 next month, and I'm sitting here interviewing these players on like Zoom from Canada, and then going to like my full-time job, you know? Like I was like, damn, you're 23, you own a home and you have a master's, like good for you, and you're a professional player. Like that's incredibly impressive. So she was talking about all that stuff, and you see that like, yeah, they're people, you know? And I spoke to Shannon as well, and Shannon's super laid back, super nice, and we talked so much about Drag Race. Every single person that comes on, they bring up Drag Race. I'm like, love perfect.
Love Drag Race.
Exactly. See, so they're all incredibly nice. So it's hard for me to pick a favorite, but that like I have my favorites in like different senses. Like most laid back, probably Charlie. Easiest to talk to, probably Ash, because she loves to talk. But they're all just, yeah, I love them all. I know I started by saying like, oh, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I love them all, but I love them all.
You're like, that first bit, cut that first bit, and then you say I love them all.
I gave like a whole rant of like, well, there's this player and this player and this player, and you guys are just sitting there probably like, oh my God, Hannah, get to the point. Like, who is your favorite? But I don't have one. It's tough. So they're all really genuinely amazing people. So, and you say like, you see the connections within the players, but they connect with us as well, and they genuinely try to. So they're a club that recognizes the fans. So I think that makes a huge difference in how like they talk to me or like anyone else that's interviewing them. Like you guys have spoken to Shannon, like super laid back, super easy to talk to, just overall like a great person, you know? So it's easy. It's easy to have favorites. It's easy, not easy to have favorites. I mean, it's not easy to have favorites. Edit that out.
What do
It makes
you
it
do
hard.
to prepare for an interview? Like, not in terms of questions and stuff. Like you're saying your first one, and you were like, "Ugh," like, how do you get yourself ready to interview like a player that you watch week in, week out?
Oh, I feel like this is where people are like, oh, you know, like I start my day with like a smoothie and I make sure like I just go into it. I think last season was completely different from this season because last season I was interviewing players at like 3 a.m. my time. Like I was constantly catering their time zones. And I was still in university then too. So I remember I did an interview at like 5 a.m. and finished at around 7. And I had a lecture at 8. And I don't think I slept that night because I was just like, I might as well just stay up. You know, I got to be up at 4 anyways, prepare for this, whatever. So I didn't sleep at all. But preparing wise, it's like, I don't eat before interviews. Like I cannot. So sometimes I feel like you can hear my stomach growling. So I was like, I need to get something for my mic so that you don't. Like I don't like to eat because I think, I don't know if it's nerves or what, but I'll just feel worse if I eat. So I don't eat. I barely sleep. I always prepare my questions like the night before because I'm the type of person where I can only work at night. I cannot work during the day. So I'll like prepare the questions and stuff. And then I just sit there and I think like, okay, what are some things that I should bring up? Like with Sam Tierney, obviously it's, you just scored against Birmingham. You score in big games. You put 2 past Durham last season to secure promotion. You whipped out a Spider-Man celebration. Why? You know, like you just kind of go into stuff like that. Like what's stuff that has happened? So I always think about things like that, but then it's like, you want it to be personal. Like I always want, sorry, I have a dog's barking. I don't know why. You always want it to feel like a conversation. That's how I go into everything. It's like, I feel like these players are already drilled with questions. If it's like Sky, BBC, anyone, like, you know, professional questions. How did you feel about this game? How did you feel about that game? Like, yeah, I'll still ask those questions, but I also want to have a conversation. Like, what do you do on your days off? And then I always go off of what they say. Like, oh, I do this. And it's, oh, well, have you tried this? Like, what do you think of this? You know, and I try to make it a little bit personal in the sense that when I spoke to Ash the first time, I asked her if she'd ever been to Tim Hortons because I learned that you have Tim Hortons in the UK, which blew me
Is that the fish
away.
and chip shop?
No. That's the,
do they have in the UK? I'm not really sure.
It's like coffee. Jay, do you know what I'm talking about?
Tim Hortons. Yeah.
That's trademark Canada. Like that's as Canadian as it gets. And I learned that there's one in Leicester. So I asked Ash, I was like, have you ever been to Tim Hortons? You know, like that's an extremely specific question. Like I could have said like, oh, like what was your favorite tackle that you've ever done throughout your entire career? But no, instead I was like, you know, like, have you ever been to Tim Hortons? Totally
I love it. It's so niche. I think that's hilarious.
Exactly. You know, it's like ask them stuff like, oh, maybe they haven't. So that's something new for them to try. Like they can leave this interview and be like, oh, you know what, maybe I will try it. And funny enough, she actually sent me a picture of herself with a drink from Tim Hortons right after the interview. So she went through with it. But it's stuff like that. Like one thing we ask on the show right now is we're making a playlist from songs that every single guest suggests. We ask them like, what is your song and like why have you chosen that song? And they always have like some story to go with it, you know, like, and music really says a lot about a person, I find. So hearing them be like, oh well, I actually love listening to this, then okay, that says a lot about you. Why this? And then it just kind of goes into a whole other conversation. So when I'm preparing, I always make sure to have stuff like that, like, okay, what can I bring up as like a topic of conversation and not just like an interview, you know? And but for me personally, I don't do much preparation. I don't eat and that's it. And then I wake up like an hour before usually, or 2 hours depending on the time. It's usually in the mornings for me, but I don't do much. I feel like I can't give you an exciting answer for that one because there's no routine like whatsoever. It's probably bad, but
You know, when you just said then, like sometimes you wake up like an hour or two before. I don't know. I don't know if you've ever had it as well. I've done stuff when I've woken up and gone straight there, like especially if I've stayed in hotels. Like, and I get somewhere and it's like I've not spoken to anyone like the whole day, and it's like the first person you speak to is like your interview, and I'm like, and I sit down. I'm like, on my questions. And like, in my head, I feel like, what if my voice don't work? Like, honestly, you see my dog doing yoga in the background. I always just think like, I've not spoken at all today. And then when I first started presenting, I was doing like nights at supermarkets. I was working at Asda, like, I think I started at like 7 p.m. or something mental. And then like it was like 7 till 7, and I'd go out, and I was like new there, so I didn't really know anyone. So I just wouldn't talk. And then I'd go to an interview like first thing in the morning, and I'd be like, bro, I've not spoken in 12 hours. And now I've got to like deliver an interview. And it used to like, it was always fine. Obviously, my voice was always fine. I opened my mouth and obviously words came out. But like, I used to remember getting like so nervous, thinking like, oh my God, like, and when I was like, when I thought, I was like, oh, should I sing a song like on the way there? And I'm like, I'm on the tram and it's well early. I can't just be like singing a song. That's mental. But like, it's like little things, proper like, not, I want to say irk, but I don't think that's a word. I don't know if that's a word, but like,
I've heard people say irk.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's a word.
I feel like it is a thing, but like,
you can say like it irks me.
Yeah, it's like sort of makes me anxious, but not to the point of like I'm anxious. It's sort of like the one just before.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you're not eating, that would make me anxious. That'd be like, oh.
You're like, do I talk to myself to like warm up my voice? Is that weird? Yeah. What else do I do? Do I just sing for a bit? Like you said, like, I don't think I ever thought about that. Like, yeah, I wake up and I go straight into interviews. Like with this one, you guys are the first people I've spoken to today. Like, I came right into it, and you guys are the first ones I've spoken to. So, but I woke up this morning. I was like, I need to take a shower. Like, I need to wake up because I'm not gonna be able to match their energy if I'm like this. So as soon as I got up, I was like, Kate, I need to like
straight
get
to
up.
Hortons.
Exactly.
I can't go forward to a fish and chip shop. I'm trying to. Is it Harry Ramsden's? I think it's the fish and chip shop. It's something like that. Someone's name.
Some other guy's name, yeah.
Yeah, some other geezer who sells some stuff. I don't know.
What made you support Leicester?
What made me support Leicester?
Yeah, what made you support Leicester? Especially like being in Canada, it's crazy.
Yeah. I remember when I first went on to BBC, because they have me on there so often to talk about the women's team. They're like, so you're in Canada. How did you find Leicester? Like, how did you find us? But I mean, my story's not great and I'm not super proud of it, but it's obviously being Canadian, I grew up with a family that loves hockey and watches hockey. And where I was born is, so we don't have like the whole derby term here in Canada. It's like rivalry essentially, and that's like it. But where I was born was right in the middle of two cities, like two rival cities. So growing up, I was like, okay, you either choose this one or the other one. And like, obviously my grandpa supported one, my grandma supported the other, and then my mom supported one. And then my dad supported like a completely different team from his hometown. And I just always loved being like a shit disturber. So I was like, I'm not going to go with either of them. So when I was a kid, I ended up supporting the Coyotes, which they're not even a Canadian team, which is why I'm kind of angry at myself. Like, oh, I chose an American team. But you know what? I allow it because every team has like more Canadians. So it's fine. And so I decided to support the Coyotes, and because I loved dogs. That was my reason. I loved dogs as a kid. And of course the coyote was a dog, you know? Like,
I can see where this is going now.
Exactly. You can see where it's going now. But you know, I had met the players for the Coyotes and stuff, and I'd go to their games whenever they play. Like here, I'd go to whichever games I could, and I just had a relationship with them. So I was like, I love this team. And then I think I was like 11 years old. I was like, okay, I'm going to get into more sports. And then obviously with football, I was like, okay, time to pick my team. You know, like it wasn't the whole support your local or anything, because I didn't have a local until 2017 because there was nothing that existed here. So then I saw foxes and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going with these guys because they're similar to coyotes. So I was like, perfect. And I always joke and I'm always like, you know what? I'm so happy that 11-year-old me chose Leicester, not Wolves, with the logic that I had, because oh my God, if I supported Wolves, I think that'd be more painful. So
the badge isn't as cool. The Wolves badge isn't as cool. And also orange.
Yeah, orange is a mad
The
colour.
blue, I think I prefer the blue to the
Yeah,
orange.
you can't really
Exactly.
match the kit with too much with the Wolves kit.
Exactly. You can't, orange is just, orange and yellow are the two colors that I cannot wear. So I'm glad we haven't had a yellow kit in a while, but eventually we will, and then I'm gonna be stuck.
The Leicester kits always have been banging recently. The last couple of years, like, have been very sick. I always like when Leicester bring out a kit, damn, like that it's another good kit. Like it's always like you envy and like I always think, can I get away? What's my dog doing? I'm always like, can I get away? Can I get away with wearing like another English shirt, another English team shirt? And I'm like, probably not. Like I'd probably get ripped.
You probably would, yeah.
It's just like it's a strange one because I think like I always see like different people wearing like different American teams. I'm like, no, I can't do it. I just can't bring myself to do it. And it's one of the things. It's like once someone gets the picture, you're done out here. You're done. if I was in an Arsenal shirt and I'm like, oh, Arsenal are overrated. Bam, in my reply, first one, Arsenal shirt. I'm like, no.
They were like, this you?
Sit down.
I feel like it could depend on the team too. Like supporting City and then going out with like a United or Liverpool kit is something, but you're like, oh, you know, like I really like the style. Is like that's still wrong. But if you're like, oh well, I really like Shrewsbury Town's kit, so like that's different.
Yeah, I think maybe you get let off.
Like
yeah. I saw a funny meme the other day about Arsenal, and it was like after an Arsenal loss, and I don't know if you'll get this reference, Hannah. Because have you watched like the UK Love Island?
I started it.
From the very first series?
Yes. It like I'd only seen bits from the first series. I haven't seen anything else.
Oh well, it's on one of the series. Is like a guy called Chris, and like the mood's a bit bad in the villa, and he's like, "Oh, should I rap a bit to lift the mood up?" To like, and they're like, "No," and it was after an Arsenal loss, and instead of it being Chris, it was Adidas, and it was like, "Oh, should I release a kit to bring the mood up?" And that's what it honestly like. When you're like not, I don't know if you love it, Jay, but from the outside, sometimes when I'm getting on Arsenal and I'm like, this is all off the record now as well. When I'm like Arsenal are an unserious club, I'm like, you lot are a fashion brand. Like
you know what?
You're no longer a football club, bro.
I
like,
enjoyed
fashion.
I enjoyed it until I realized the women's side was not getting the same kit.
What we saying about El Clasico being at the Nou Camp?
I wish I could go. That's what I'm saying. I wish I could go. I think it's huge, obviously. Like the fact that they've been promoting it for as long as they have been, whereas some clubs like wait for like, oh, a week in advance, we're gonna be playing here. Surprise. But with that, like I think it's huge. Maybe like I know a huge argument that people make with like women's football is like, well, do you want to be playing in these big stadiums when you can't fill the seats? You know, like doesn't that create like this whole like lack of an atmosphere or whatever? Like,
what do you think of the separate social medias then?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that because.
Are you?
I'm a big fan of that because sometimes, obviously, if the men's side has 14 million and the women's side has 1 million, obviously you want them to. It's easier to go to the 14 million and try and get new fans from that. But at the same time, I think, what if I just want dedicated stuff about that women's team? I don't care about seeing the men's team right now, but I know the ratio is going to be off. So even if it is all on that one, I know I'm going to see 80% men's and 20% women's. I'd rather just see the 100% women's and just get what I want to get. And I think because some like national teams, it's all together. And then it's like, you go through tiles and tiles and tiles of men's, then you get to women's. And it's like, it's just cluttered. So I think it's better, like Chelsea have their own Instagram and like now they've got 3 million. Like you can see there's that appetite.
The appetite
for just them.
massively.
They don't care about the men's. Like So I think sometimes you want the people that care to follow rather than the numbers, because sometimes it can look great if under the entire umbrella it's 50 million. But if that 50 million really cares about the men's team and the women's team's just sprinkled, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
I agree. I'm always like a mixed bag because I like the sentiment behind it's one club. It's one club, so it's one social media. In my head, I think like, yeah, that's bang on. I love that. But then at the same time, I want to see something niche, and I don't want to go into the comments and see terrible things like, and it's just like what? And it's like, well, this doesn't need to be like this. It's just because this isn't what you want to see, but other people do want to see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right that having like a dedicated channel will always have its benefits. But yeah, I do like it all being under one umbrella because I like the ethos and like he's going mental. Kobe, stop. Yeah, I like the whole ethos and it's one club. Like I love that. I just think that's like so sick.
But they have to make it then equal, like in how they're posting. They can't just. That's the thing. And then some teams you'll just see like they do content with like the men's team, but then the women's team, okay, they won the other game. Do we know who scored? There's hardly a graphic about that. Did we get the post-match interview? Nothing. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, do the social team want to do it? Like, you need the people that want to actually do it. And I think it reflects in like what you see. If there's a social team that really wants to push their women's team, you'll see it. And it's like, a lot of them, I don't know, like, are they told not to? Is there a limit? Like, but
I think a lot of it is numbers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like think United. Like if they're all one account, I know am I going to post Ronaldo?
Oh God. Yeah.
Or am I going to post a picture of Marriott? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as like I don't know if it's like, maybe not as a social media manager, which you think now I don't need to stake my claim here, especially for like the lower level employees. And it's like, I want to be able to say, my picture got 1 million likes. But there's easy ways to bail yourself out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But then that's like the challenge. How good are you? Like, because you could do something that's mad that promotes the women's side, and then people say, I haven't seen this before. Like, this is sick. And then that does a lot better because it's kind of like slow hanging fruit to just post a guy saying Sue all the time. It's like, all right, cool. But how much have you really cared about it? That's why I really rated that Chelsea thing, the Chelsea men and women's thing, the end of the year, like that portrait thing that they did. And they all
that was so sick, wasn't it?
Because they cared. I said, you know what, cool. They haven't had the men and then all of a sudden said, oh yeah, Emma Hayes, where's she at? And then just brought her in. Like, that's a proper collaborative effort, and that is one club. And I think if a lot of teams just did that, it would just come across so much better.
I think like one thing that, like, you can look at Leicester, for example, and you can say, wow, they play at the King Power, wow, they train at Beaver Drive, like the club is backing them. But then you look at their social media and it's like there's almost nothing. You know, they'll post like, oh, upcoming fixture, this person, like they'll do like the live match updates, but when there's not games, they'll just post like a picture of a player with their initials and an emoji, and that's like it. You know, like there's not much like engagement social media wise, you know, and stuff like that. And like it's improving, but I don't know if they have the same doing it for the men and women's. I don't know if it's the same person. I think it is, but like, yes, we have all these great things. We play at the King Power. We have a great training facility. But then you look at Arsenal and it's like, sure, they don't have the training tops, but look at their social media, you know, like, so every club, like I find like they differ in that sense. Like, yes, we're doing great things, but our social media could be doing far more to promote the women's team. And not just like the social media, but just promotion of things in general. Like I know a lot of fans don't know if there's travel to an away game until like the day before or like a couple days before. So there's so many aspects that can go into a women's team. Like, yes, they're backed by their owners, but do they also have like the push, the promotion and stuff like that? Like there's a lot that can still be kind of,
you know, women's team social media that like super impresses me. Or not, maybe not super impresses me in terms of I think their stuff's groundbreaking. I think like the effort they put in is amazing. Burnley.
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Really?
lot have come across any of Burnley stuff, but I went to an activation.
I see them on the For You page. Yeah.
Yeah, so they obviously show all their games on TikTok, which I think is like ridiculous. I mean, it's so sick. And then I went to an activation there, and there was like 10, 12 staff. And I was like, you lot always here? And they were like, yeah, like this is what we're doing. Like there's 2 people doing social, like a photographer, you've got video staff. And I was like, oh bro, like this was like as many people as I see at WSL game. And then like the other team, I don't want to name them, but the other team came and it was one social media person. And they were like, oh yeah, I'm just going to tweet the game and then I'm going to do the interview after. And Burnley, you got team sheets? And they're like, oh no, I haven't got a team sheet. And I just thought like, bro, like it just looks so mental. Like when you've got one team taking it so seriously and like really putting resource behind it, and then one team like turning up with a laptop under their arm. Like obviously no disrespect to that person, because they're it's not down to that one person. They're the one putting the work in, but it shows like when a team takes it seriously and they do see them as part of the club, like, and they're equal, it does show and you can feel it.
Yeah.
So I think they can do more. I think even if you don't, it's that's the thing. It's ideas. It's like, how can you make something out of the least you have? And the most important thing you have is the players. They could do so much content with the players, and that's what people come there for. They come for the team. They don't come for like the best graphics and stuff like that. They just come for the players. And I think if more people did that, they'd get so much more engagement. Like sometimes you look at players and you think, how do these players not have more followers? Because of what they do. And it's like, because they're not pushed. You don't see them. It's like out of sight, out of mind. And I think the social people they have to do more to rep the players, because it's like, it's not the player's job. The player's job is to play and get results and be footballers. It's not to kind of boost their profile. I think that's what the social teams really need to help.
That's what this is unrelated, but in terms of the sport, but the principle's the same. I went to a conference at Facebook and they had the LA Clippers like social media, like head of social. And when he joined, like none of the players had more followers than the team, which was super rare, like super rare in the NBA. And he was like why aren't you lot on like really doing anything? And they're like, oh, like, we don't really know. Like we just sort of turn up, play basketball and go. And he was like, it's 2017. Like, what do you mean you just play basketball? And then it was like, okay, we're gonna hire XXX photographer. We're gonna bring in these people. And it's like, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, we've gone from having one photographer and now we've got like 6. And it's like, no, this is gonna be sick. We're gonna have a person dedicated to you for this practice, and we're gonna send you all the pictures. You want to put it up. We're gonna go really hard, and everything grew. Like I think it had like every player got like over 100,000 followers, and then people were like, and it was like, why didn't this happen before? And it was like, well, people just didn't know.
Yeah.
Like they know you, but they didn't know that you had a social media presence. You weren't really doing anything. And I think that's like a lot of it with the WSL. The more you're seeing it, like even like going into Getty now, I remember like when I first started covering women's football, like Man City are good. Like Tom Flowers is ridiculous photographer, and Matt McNulty, all of them really good. So we always had loads of photos, but like you look for other teams and you're like, are people not really covering this? Like what's going on?
Yeah.
And now like, you can go through, type person's name into Getty, there's so many pictures. And even like something as small as that, like seeing is believing in it. Do you know what I mean? Like once, if you can go and see loads of pictures of someone and they're putting them out on Instagram, XYZ, like it just makes it easier to follow, and it's just easier. It's like puts you in the shop window for not for a club, but for fans to follow.
It's like Mary Earps. Like, how many interviews do you see United do with Mary Earps? But it's like, I found her TikTok and she was really entertaining. It was like, I don't see this. Like, I don't see this being pushed.
It's like a continuous cycle, I always think, because it's like the club gives the player followers and it's like the back, especially like when they're international players.
Yeah.
Like they bring so many, it's like, oh, I don't really support a club, but I love this player. And then all of a sudden, it's like you were saying with Miedema, it's like, they're not Arsenal fans, they're Miedema fans. So they're now invested in the club. And I still think it's something that we're really struggling to grasp in the like social media realms.
You just got to do it right too. Like do the right content. Like I do not follow the Russian league, but Spartak Moscow is all over like all of my socials because whoever is doing their stuff, they know what they're doing. Like they're on top of every single trend. Like the content they put out is entertaining. They put stuff out about different clubs too. Like I know I understand it's men's, but like they're a club that I look at. I'm like, your social media person is doing the right job. Like the fact that your content is reaching, like I see them on TikTok all the time. Like they're on my For You page. Like I understand, yeah, the algorithm knows I'm a Leicester fan. They want me to suffer the whole Europa
They want me
League
to suffer.
and like be happy for Spartak. But I'm like, they're all over my For You page, like Zenit too. I don't know what it is with like the Russian admins, but they know what they're doing. And if women's teams like also kind of took that, like I think men's Premier League teams as well could do better. Like some definitely could, like just stay on top of the trends and watch what people are talking about.
Right, that is it for us. Another week done. Hannah, thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully you can go get yourself some food because I know you haven't eaten yet. And Jay, as always, big thank you to you, man. Try to cheer up, Jay. It's not that bad. You're still top of the league, bro.
I'll try my hardest.
And then, of course, everyone at home, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.